about the actual content of the furry fandom itself.
Here
that was the boring part. That's just getting the details out of the way. So, personas. Furries have these personas. For those who don't know, a persona is sort of an avatar-like representation of yourself. This is the face that you present to the fandom. This is how you want other people to see you, to interact with you. Usually it consists of some kind of a name and some kind of a species. We find that most furries, about 95% plus of furries, actually has a persona. And most furries tend to say that they either currently have one or only ever had one in their life. You see that some furries have 2, possibly 3 personas. But the sort of important point to this is that most furries pick a persona and stick with it. They maybe change it once, perhaps twice throughout their life. But this isn't something they change like they change their underwear. This is something that they change maybe once. So it tends to be deep and meaningful for furries. And in fact, we find that for most furries, their persona isn't just something they've ripped off. They watched The Lion King and they decided, I want to be that. Most furries say that their persona comes from something within them, something that was inspired by them and sort of contributed to the making of this particular persona. And in fact, most furries say that their persona is pretty similar to themselves. Although when we do the research, we also find that your persona tends to be me, but a better version of me. So what you're looking at here, higher bars mean my persona is more of this than I am. And we find that furries say their personas are more attractive, more confident, more energetic, playful, extroverted, enthusiastic versions of who I am. And the least popular personas are personas that are shy, introverted, disorganized, predictable, intolerant. These are things that you don't see very common in personas. So the idea is that for most furries, when they create a persona, it's a better version of themselves. It's me, but some good stuff thrown in as well. That's not to say, of course, that there aren't furries who create personas that are the complete opposites of themselves or alter egos. That also happens as well, but we're talking about averages. In terms of the most dominant species, not dominant, but the most popular species, we find wolves are the most popular single species in the fandom, followed closely by foxes, dogs, big cats, dragons, mythical creatures kind of lumped in together, cats, etc., etc., etc. And that said, we find about 14% of furries, 14 to 15% of furries, pick hybrids, so some hybrid of 2 or more species. So, these are sort of the most popular species in the fandom, but the question is, does this matter? Do we find that there are differences between wolves and cats or cats and dogs? And the answer is a resounding no. Anyway, we tried to look at this data, and it is messy data. It is a nightmare to try to analyze. But when we do analyze it, we find that nothing really seems to stand out. It's not the case that dogs are more friendly than cats, or wolves are more courageous than anyone else. We tend to find there's no personality differences that are associated with picking one species or another. What's interesting though is that furries tend to believe that a persona is informative. So a lot of furries believe that if I know that you're a cat, I know something about you. I know a little bit about your personality based on that. That said, and to their credit, many furries say that most furries say they won't judge other people by their persona species. So if I know you're a dog, I might have figured out a little bit about you from that, but I'm not going to hate you for it. So furries tend to get along pretty well. This is one thing that a lot of media misconceptions tend to involve, is the idea that, oh, so when you go to a furry convention, do all the dogs huddle in one place and all the cats huddle in one place? And no, furries tend to mingle pretty well. So yeah, they don't make my cutesy little furries get along. So, what makes a furry a furry? Where do furries come from? The internet is the #1. Disney's on there as well. But a lot of furries have been saying, what led you down the path to eventually finding the fandom? And a lot of furries say that the internet was a big influence. They found art through the internet, they found out about the community and that it existed in the first place through the internet. And it's probably the case that the internet plays a huge role in the proliferation of the furry fandom, and the fact that it's so big today. When asking what sort of led you to becoming a furry, about 1/4 of furries said that it was something within me. I just kind of always had this interest that I can't really describe. It was just there. About 35% of furries said that it was some outside influence. I had a pet dog, or I watched a movie that just totally changed the way I thought about animals, and that led me down this path. And most furries say some combination of both. Yeah, I say this one because this is one that I put the most often.
Yeah.
That's not
Raise your hand if this plays some role in your becoming a furry. There you go.
down the line.
All right. So what do furries actually do? Well, they go to furry conventions. They go to furry meets. 35% of furries attend some kind of local meetup, whether it's going to dinners or having local parties. About 25% attend them regularly. About 25% of furries have never attended a furry convention, whereas 50% tend to attend at least one convention per year. Some of them are fantastic conventions, others don't exist. For those who know, this was the infamous CSI episode. They're fictional. Which I think they tried to turn into an actual convention. Just to make it crash and burn, yeah. So, in terms of sort of carrying along on the subject, we find that a lot of furries use the internet as well, go figure. We find that more than half of furries say they use message boards or online forums like Fur Affinity or local forums at least once per day. So this makes up a very significant part of furries' lives, or put another way.
The internet is for furries.
It is. So, other things that furries do. Oh yes, sorry, friends. So furries have friends, go figure. We're a room full of friends here. When we asked furries, you know, are all your friends furries? Do you have friends outside the fandom? We found that furries said about half of my friends are also furries. So they have a life outside the fandom.
We do.
In terms of fursuits, fursuits are one of the most visual parts of the fandom. This is, the media kind of jumps on that because this is the most readily apparent, readily obvious thing that when you walk into a furry convention, that's the first strange thing you see is, oh, what are those? So it's understandably so. In actuality, only about 13% of furries actually owns a full fursuit. So most furries don't actually own a fursuit. At a convention, you get kind of a skewed sample. It's closer to about 20% because you kind of put all the fursuits in one place. If you have a fursuit, this is the place to wear it. But only about 13% of furry sampled actually owned one. 19% own parts of a fursuit, and when you break it down by parts, you find that what most furries do own are things like tails, with about half of the fandom owning a tail. 37% own collars, 34% have some kind of furry-themed clothing, 27% ears, paws. Wings are so low because, you know, only certain species have wings. Go figure. In terms of what the most sort of popular websites on the in the furry fandom are, I've been seeing the top website for top artists. It's important to note that there's incredible diversity as well among this. Look at that, guys. There was incredible diversity as well. The fandom is extremely decentralized. No one or two people gets to decide what's in the fandom because of the thousands of people that we studied. We found more than 1,150 unique artists and websites were referenced by furries. So it's very decentralized, furries and their interests. In terms of artwork, we find that a lot of furries actually consider themselves to be artists, more so than in other fandoms as well. So you see that furries are more likely to consider themselves to be artists in some form or another than anime fans, either online or at conventions. I guess sports fans don't necessarily consider themselves to be artists. Writers. We find there are more writers attending a convention like A-Con, but in general, a lot of furries also consider themselves to be writers. One thing that we've looked at in studying how furries relate to other fandoms was this idea of fandom entitlement, and the idea that furries feel entitled to certain things from artists. And we found that of the four fandoms, furries were the most entitled as a group.
But it's not much more than A-Con.
It was statistically significantly different. When the bars are different colors, it means the stats suggest they're statistically different, or statistically significantly different.
It looks so small.
It is, but it's also because we're dealing with, you know, more than 1,000 furries, 5,000 furries, so very large numbers means small differences become statistically significantly different. Yep. So what do furry artists, or in terms of the artists, we wanted to understand this phenomenon a little better, so we actually interviewed artists. We actually got a focus group full of artists and asked them about attitudes towards artists in the fandom, the treatment of artists. And we found were that furry artists tended to be, on average, relatively equally male and female. But what was interesting is that male artists in the fandom were almost twice as likely to have been furries first. So the average male furry artist was a furry first and then became an artist later. The average female furry artist was an artist first and then became a furry later. About 25% of the artwork produced by the average artist is pornographic. Interestingly, about
Only 25?
We'll get there. About 33 or 1/3 of the fandom is regularly concerned, or 1/3 of the artists in the fandom are regularly concerned about the reputation of the fandom. So they're concerned about how other furries treat them. Specifically things like bandwagoning. If it becomes popular to hate one artist, suddenly 5,000 furries come and jump on that person. So a lot of artists live with a lot of anxiety or trepidation about how they're going to be treated by furries. And about 95% of artists agree that furries are at least moderately demanding when it comes to things like commissions. This isn't the same thing as saying artists hate furries, but they say that they acknowledge that there's, at least some furries can be quite demanding. And artists say that about half of their friends are also artists, so artists tend to congregate with other artists. Among some of the concerns that artists frequently cited were things like a fear of mob mentality and bad reviews, so a lot of furry artists were concerned about putting their artwork online for fear of the kind of negative comments they might receive for it. A pressure from some artists to draw copyrighted material, so a lot of furries saying, hey, can you draw this character from the show? And artists saying, for copyright reasons, I can't really do that. Or drawing things that artists didn't feel comfortable drawing. For example, if you didn't feel like you were very good at drawing, technology or guns, and a furry commission tried to pressure you into drawing something you didn't feel like you were very good at drawing. Fans expecting free art, fans expecting quick turnaround times, or fans really undervaluing their work. A lot of furry artists feel like in any other fandom, in any other context, they could be making more money than they are in the furry fandom. So these are common concerns that were expressed by artists in the fandom. And also, a big one that was really pushed for was a lot of artists were concerned when it came to taking commissions that the people commissioning them were being very vague, very unrealistic in their expectations and not making it clear what they were actually hoping the artist would produce, which led to conflict once the piece was produced, and they said, that's not what I wanted at all.